Why is One Piece so long? With over 1,100 chapters and somehow just as many episodes, One Piece began in 1997, with 2024 marking its 27th anniversary, meaning that One Piece is now the exact same age as I was when I was 27. The reason why One Piece is so long is even more ridiculous than you can imagine, because much like some of you watching, it was an accident. When series author Eiichiro Oda started One Piece, his plan was to create a story that would last 5 years. It was loosely going to be Luffy's quest to defeat the 4 emperors and become the Pirate King, something that was actually set up in the Romance Dawn prototypes, where Crescent Moon Galley was aiming to become one of the best Hutosui, which may sound Japanese, but it's actually just the English words best 3 pronounced in Japanese. Now clearly something went very wrong here, because we didn't even know that the 4 emperors existed until about 10 years into publication, also known as 5 years past Oda's initial plan to end the series. So why did it take a whole decade for Oda to begin writing the story he'd actually planned? Well, the first 100 chapters of One Piece are a prologue. The actual premise of the story doesn't even begin until Luffy enters the Grand Line, and the reason why that took so long is because Oda was having ever so much fun drawing the series that he shut off the narrative GPS and got a bit lost in his own story. Not in a bad way, mind you, he was having the time of his life. So during this time, Oda decided to quietly abandon his original 5-year plan. So he said F it, in Japanese of course, and just let the series evolve naturally. And with this unchecked ambition, Oda then made a series of small decisions that would have colossal ramifications for the length of the series. And the next 2.5 decades of manga can almost solely be attributed to 2 completely arbitrary decisions. One of which is that to celebrate the very sexily numbered chapter 69, Eiichiro Oda decided to invite 7 friends over to thoroughly screw the ever-loving crap out of his original plans. I suppose if you wanted to blame a single character, then all of this falls on Yosaku. If you don't remember him, he's the dude who got deep-throated by a panda shark, and in chapter 69, he made a statement that would change One Piece forever when he introduced the concept of the 7 warlords of the sea. To which Luffy responded, "The Who?" Which is incorrect, because the Who have had 8 members across their 6-decade musical career. The main issue here is the number 7. Oda chose that number not because he had plans for 7 characters, but because it sounded cooler than all of the other reasonable and much more achievable numbers. And this extremely arbitrary decision has now been cited by Oda as the core reason why One Piece is now older than the Republic of Serbia. The reason why One Piece has been continually running for the past 20 years is because of the 7 warlords of the sea. One Piece was initially intended to be a tale of fighting against the 4 emperors, wrapping up after just 5 years. It struck me that having these cool 7 warlords of the sea in the comic would be awesome. It was just a passing thought, really. And then, just like a horror movie, it spiraled into such a long series. Why couldn't it be 5 or 2 warlords of the sea? I thought 7 warlords just sounded so much cooler. Well, I've no lingering regrets, since I've already drawn what I've wanted to draw. Now, as a recap, the 7 warlords of the sea are Dracula Mihawk, Don Quixote Doflamingo, Boa Hancock, Bartholomew Kuma, Sir Crocodile, Jinbei, no last name, and of course, the man whose body was designed to resemble very disappointingly small man parts in silhouette, Gecko Moria. So these are the fairly major characters, and in fact, the 7 warlords serve as the main antagonist in 3 separate sagas. Not arcs, sagas, and also one arc being Amazon Lily. But that combined with the Alabaster Dressrosa and Thriller Bark sagas mean that we currently have a grand total of 324 chapters where dealing with a warlord of the sea is the main narrative focus, which is approximately 29% of One Piece to this point. So you can practically write off a whole decade to warlords alone. However, that doesn't accurately describe the magnitude of their impact, because even in arcs when warlords aren't the main focus, there is almost always a warlord present in some sort of primary role, such as Impelled Down, where Luffy used a warlord to sneak into the prison and then recruited 2 more warlords to help him break out again. Then almost every single warlord, past and present, was involved in the Paramount War, and after that, Fishman Island had a large focus on Jinbei, and even in the modern day, Egghead Island is heavily focused on Bartholomew Kuma and a group of warlord clones known as the Seraphim, with that arc being just over 60 chapters at this point. So if we're taking all of that into account, then it is not 29% anymore. We are now bloating the series to 50, maybe even 60%. And this doesn't yet account for the fact that there have been more than 7 warlords. After the time skip, half of them were replaced. One of those replacees being Trafalgar Law, who practically took over the role of protagonist for a while, another being the already prolific Buggy the Clown, and to this day there's even one warlord who we still haven't touched, being Edward Weevil. So we are well into the final saga of One Piece, and warlords are still bloating the story beyond any possible comprehension. There is no way that Oda could have realized the monster he unleashed unleashed when he arbitrarily decided their number back in 1998. Plus, we should also take into account the impact of the system itself, because the warlords have been the primary focus of non-warlords in the past. For example, Marine Admiral Fujitora's entire character arc to this point was about dissolving the warlord system. And after Crocodile was beaten on Alabasta, the focus of the world government was refilling his seat, at which point early on, Blackbeard's goal was to fill that seat and become a warlord. You've also got Trafalgar Law's plan to become a warlord and then have Doflamingo resign from the warlords, and my god, it just goes on and on and on. It's almost like Eiichiro Oda has an internal policy of whenever there's not a warlord on the screen, everyone should be asking, where's warlords? And it's at the point where it's far easier to calculate the amount of arcs and chapters that have nothing to do with warlords, which is approximately 350. And if we engage in some very powerful reverse maths, we can work out that, and this is frankly incredible, an unbelievably arousing 69% of the series, as a result of a decision made in chapter 69, is warlord driven or heavily warlord assisted. All because Eiichiro Oda thought that the number 7 was pretty cool. And if you want to put that in terms of real life human years, then that's just over 18 and a half. Meaning that warlord content can now legally vote, drink, smoke, join the military, and engage in various sex acts across the majority of the world. And you'd think that Oda would have learned from this warlord situation, but he didn't. Because many years later, Eiichiro Oda made the same mistake again, just this time worse. When on Sabani Archipelago, he introduced the 11 supernovas, and to be as fair as I can, 2 of those 11 were Luffy and Zoro, so we're not going to count them. We'll just call them the 9 supernovas, and I guess they have names, those names being Eustace, Captain Kidd, Massacre Soldier Killer, Trafalgar Law, Capone Gang Beige, Mad Monk Rouge, Jewelry Bonnie, Basil Hawkins, Diaz Drake, and bringing up the rear is Scratch Menapu, who I associate with a rear because he has the word poo in his name. Now look, 9 is traditionally a larger number than 7, so that's already a bit of a problem, because again, these characters weren't created because Oda had plans for them. In fact, in his own words, I created the supernovas right before the chapter where they got introduced. None of them existed in my plot notebooks before that chapter. I was in a desperate situation, worrying, at this rate, the Sabani arc won't be interesting enough. Then, inspiration for the 9 supernovas came to mind unconsciously. I should have reduced the number of supernovas since there were too many, but look, I made all of them appear in the manga, and I'm really surprised they survived till now, since I thought about half of them would drop out of the tough new world already. So Oda created these 9 characters, in his words, unconsciously, just on a whim, because this arc wasn't feeling interesting enough. And these 9, they have done untold damage to the brevity or lack thereof of One Piece, because almost every single post-time skip arc features a supernova as a key focus. Trafalgar Law was obviously the star of Punk Hazard and Dressrosa, whereas Capone Gang Beige was a major focus on Whole Cake Island, and Jewelry Bonnie is more or less the main protagonist of Egghead Island. And then to dive into the beast that is Wano, by far the longest One Piece arc to date, that arc featured all but 3 of the supernovas that Oda introduced on a whim during Sabani, which means that so far, you can directly attribute 460 plus chapters of One Piece to prime supernova story focus, also known as 41% of the series. I say plus because Egghead Island isn't over yet at the time of this recording, so it's only going to get bigger until then. However, I should also say that a lot of the supernova focus crosses over with the warlord focus, because here's the big thing. These 2 groups have a strong compound effect on one another, as warlord stories became interconnected with supernova stories, such as the sinister bond between Trafalgar Law and Doflamingo, and the father-daughter relationship of Kuma and Bonnie. And again, Kuma and Bonnie is the story that we're currently examining. So even as late as chapters around 1100, the whole narrative is still being driven by warlords and supernovas. 2 arbitrary decisions that together have probably made this series 15 to 20 years longer than it should have been. Not that that's a bad thing. It's just very interesting the impact that these 2 arbitrary decisions have had. And at this point, I should note that Oda's ideas don't go unchecked by the staff around him, not anymore anyway. And I've probably given the impression that One Piece is so long because Oda is a madman, completely out of control, and puts absolutely everything that enters his brain on the page. But it's very much the opposite. Sure, it was a bit like that in the beginning, but as time goes on, Oda and his editors have had to make a serious effort to streamline those ideas. According to Great Newspaper Volume 2, Oda has so many ideas that his editors need to frequently sit him down and find a way to compress those ideas. One great example of this is Punk Hazard, the Pokeball looking half fire, half ice island. The reason why it's half of both is because Oda originally wanted them to be 2 different arcs. one set on a fire island, and one set on a snow island, which would have spiraled absolutely out of control as One Piece always does, so eventually he settled on combining both ideas into one arc. And the exact same thing happened in the very next arc. Green Bit was originally going to be a whole island of its own before it was turned into the peninsula offshoot of Dressrosa. It was probably going to be a short stop, maybe like Zou arc length, and focused more on exploring the Tontara tribe, the culture of the dwarves, etc. And it would have been its own arc with its own antagonist, probably someone related to the Don Quixote family, or maybe even a marine to introduce us to Fujitora. But the decision to combine Green Bit with Dressrosa happened startlingly late in the process, as in about 2 chapters before we were supposed to begin the Green Bit arc, which is why Law told Smoker that they were heading to Green Bit next instead of Dressrosa. And it's also speculated but not confirmed that Whole Cake Island and the Germa Kingdom were originally separate ideas that also got combined. So Eiichiro Oda and his editors are desperately trying to streamline his ideas to make them as efficient as possible and make them happen as quickly as possible. But if that's happening, why does it feel like One Piece is taking longer than ever before? Something else that doesn't get nearly enough credit and I suppose blame for why One Piece is so long is the scheduling of the manga, especially over the last decade or so. One Piece is published every week in a magazine rather appropriately called Weekly Shonen Jump. And for the first 3 full years, Eiichiro Oda published 48 chapters a year in this magazine, which is the maximum that any author in Weekly Shonen Jump can publish because the other 4 weeks of the year are mandatory magazine breaks. But over time, the average annual quantity of chapters has consistently dropped. In the early 2000s, this average dropped to about 45 chapters a year. Then by 2010, the average was around 40, which over the ensuing years dropped to 39, then 38, until we hit 2020, where there was a massive dip to a total of just 33 chapters published that year, which many would be keen to write off as an aberration due to the pandemic. But things have stayed quite constant since then, and if anything, have gotten worse, with 2023 dropping to 32 chapters, and 2024 is currently on track to equal that, and even potentially become the lowest year yet. This is very important to note because a lot of people are quick to accuse Oda of extending the story for profit, but the pacing of the story is largely the same. It's just that what would have taken Oda 1 year to draw before, now takes closer to 2 years to put on page. For comparison, Dressrosa's 102 chapters took 2 years to publish, whereas Wano's 149 chapters took 4 years. And one reason for these increased amount of breaks is of course Oda's health. The average lifespan of a male mangaka in Japan is 62.6 years, which is not much. Quite horrendous compared to the life of an average Japanese man, which is 84 and a half. So it's a brutal industry, and frankly, Oda is superhuman for lasting as long as he has and remaining even this consistent. It's also becoming exceptionally common for Oda to take extended breaks as well, around 3 to 4 weeks at a time, and this happens for a wide variety of reasons. After Wano ended, I guess more accurately, during Wano kind of ending, Oda took a month off to visit a live action, and even attended the premiere of the live action in LA. He then took a second month-long break later that year to undergo surgery to fix his astigmatism, and he recently had a 3-week break earlier this year. But that's not all, because over the past year or so, page numbers have also been reducing. It's becoming increasingly common to see 13-page chapters when the standard across Weekly Shonen Jump is 17 to 18. And eventually, with enough of these 13-page installments, you can have a situation where Oda can publish the same number of chapters as the previous year, but those chapters overall contain 25% less content, which means that the story itself moves along 25% slower. It's a constant battle. Yet Eiichiro Oda, for all intents and purposes, has infinite ideas available. Those ideas then get taken and compressed into a reasonable amount of chapters. However, as time goes on, less chapters get published with less pages per chapter. So in a really bizarre way, the modern, completely streamlined story, moving faster than ever, is actually taking longer to tell than the early days of One Piece, when Oda was allowed to let his imagination run completely unchecked. So that takes us to the big question, which is, when is One Piece going to end? In 2022, Oda stated that his goal was to end One Piece in 3 years. And if that was still true, then it puts us on track to see the final chapter sometime next year in 2025. However, realistically, there is no way I can see that happening, because we still haven't finished Egghead yet, and next up it looks like we're going to Elbaf. Then after that we have a whole final war to cover, and that little matter of reaching Laugh Tale, and finally making Luffy the Pirate King. And so at our current pace, that would mean that One Piece only has between 50 to 60 chapters left. And I just don't see all of that happening in the same time that it took to complete the Fishman Island arc. So it feels very likely that One Piece will, at the very least, still be around to celebrate its 30th anniversary in 2027.